Hi guys, I'm finally back with another demo, and we're carrying on with character design, whereas the last demo was more about how I go about the process of drawing a character. Here I'm finally going to concentrate on the process of actually designing or concepting a character design. First of all, the most important thing to start off with is direction. And even with your own work, if you have some idea going in, the more parameters you give yourself, the actual more freedom you'll have. If you ever hear the term blue sky concept, run for cover, basically means is anything goes. And equivalent to that is a client saying, I don't know what I like or what I want, but I'll know when I see it. That's just way too open-ended. So even in this case, I'm giving myself some objectives. So it's a warrior, as you can see, that I've written down here, and I've decided it's going to be for a third-person action game, fantasy, influences of a barbarian or a tribal type. It'll be on next-gen console, PS3, Xbox 360. He's a heavy hitter, meaning he does a lot of damage, or a tank. And the style will be kind of hyper-exaggerated, hyper-realistic, or hyper-stylized. And finally, the method, both line sketch as well as painted silhouette and shapes. And I'll actually go back and forth on that so you can see those two different methods in approaching these thumbnail sketches. Okay, so one thing I just wanted to make a note before I forget is I've sped up this video about 5 times, so it ends up being about 20 minutes. The actual process of it all was about 45 minutes for the thumbnails, and I did 9 of them, so that comes down to about 5 minutes each, some less, some longer. And then I took one and pushed it towards a more detailed sketch at the end, which took about 15 minutes. So a very quick process, okay? So about an hour actually, an hour's worth of work. And so you get an idea of how this process needs to be pretty fast when you're iterating and coming up with the best design towards a game. So here I am. First, what I'm doing here is just doing kind of a template. And you see already I'm going flip-flopping between doing rough line sketch, and then I did a silhouette there with that hard black shape, and now I'm going back and cleaning up with a drawing, with a line again. So you'll see me doing that back and forth. Sometimes I'll just only do line sketch, sometimes I'll only do a painted silhouette or painted shape, but in this case you'll actually see me pretty evenly going back and forth with that. And the reason for it is you pick and choose which method is appropriate for that given moment of what kind of detail or outline or design you want to show. Some cases a line is more effective, but in other cases doing it just a silhouette or a shape or a hard shape gets the point across more, especially when you're determining silhouettes and things like that. So regardless of platform or tech, and in this case we decided earlier already that this is going to be for consoles, and it's third person, that means we know that we want to go for something highly detailed. But that being said, a silhouette is always important, because what you see from far away is the silhouette. And if two characters look completely different in terms of their details, but from far away their silhouette is exactly the same, it may be hard to tell them apart from that distance. And the more you can recognize a character from close up and from far away, the better. Not only for player recognition, but even things like branding. And when you look at characters like Mickey Mouse or Mario or something like that, just based on the silhouette who it is right away. So here you see I've done a template for just the form for the figure, and I've duplicated it a couple times, and now I'm designing over it almost like a paper doll. So in this case, it's definitely not at this stage I've decided not to pursue specific proportion or pose, but just enough to get the point across in terms of his body language as well as his size. At this stage I'm concentrating on just quick iteration on the actual design of the outfit and weapons and things like that. So that's why I'm doing it this way. So here I'm drawing over, and I'm thinking about things like if it's tribal or a warrior, then they're a little bit more, they're more about the outdoors, so maybe they're incorporating using furs or hides from animals they've hunted. Armor would be, it wouldn't be like a paladin or a knight. It wouldn't be fully plated. It would be maybe accented here and there, or leather armor, not as much iron or metal. And the metal also would feel like it has to feel like it was made by hand, so you wouldn't have any of these perfect symmetry or a certain impression of armor that you could tell that would look more machine made, like in sci-fi films or something. So again, because this is fantasy and it has some barbarian and tribal influences, you have to keep those kind of things in mind. So the first one is kind of a classic, you've seen it time and time again, but I think there is a reason why everyone likes that idea of wearing an animal skin over their head. The second one is a little more kind of you could say it's almost even aboriginal or something, but it's got kind of this long fur combination, leather. And the last one is a little bit more armored, and he even puts some antlers on his helmet, which is as opposed to typical Viking horns or things like that. Actually, I'll try that later on in the demo, but in this case I put antlers on. So just, really quick, really rough pass, going back and forth, staying loose. It's not about a clean line at this point. It's just enough clarity to suggest shapes and forms and design elements. And this is the whole point. You want to give yourself options. It's the equivalent to, say, just jotting down notes if you have ideas for a story or a thought that you're really trying to find clarity in. If you just keep it in your head, you won't be able to express it. But the more you think about it, the more you write things down, the more that becomes more fluid and clear, and you communicate that idea better. And it's the same way with drawing. So that's the whole purpose of these thumbnails. Is it's almost like thinking out loud your creative ideas. And as you jot these down, new ideas come about, and that's what it's a very reactive process. You have these parameters going in, but after that you just kind of react to what you're doing. You're not so pensive about, I know for sure I'm going to make the sword this angle. It's very just again, organic process. So here what you've seen me do is I've done those 3 initial thumbnails, and I've duplicated them again just to save work, and you earn these shortcuts where I can use them as a base and then change where I see fit to showcase new designs. And see what you have here is just a nice quick way to do decaling and logos and things, and that was just a very random shape. I didn't even think about it, and I just mirrored it, and based on how you intersect it, it makes a new form, and that's the logo I came up with. And you'll see me do that in more than one case here. So again, just going in, differentiating, branching off from those 3 first initial thumbnail designs I made, and some things remain the same, and the more important features are what stands out. Again, at this point, that's what it's about, zeroing in on key features and silhouettes that really make this thing differentiate between designs. So like I mentioned before, I did end up doing some horns here. You got to do that at least once. But you see how I've reused the horns here to put some spikes on the shoulder pads. Again, it's just because this is the early stage. This is the kind of thing you can do to speed up your work, just to get the point across. You wouldn't do that for necessarily final rendering and that kind of thing. But the point is again, just to use your time efficiently to get across the main point of each design. Trying a different weapon type here. Here you can kind of tell I really wasn't sure what I was doing. Sometimes that's a good thing, sometimes it's a bad thing. Here it's kind of like almost like a Morning Star mace type of weapon or variant. And again, repeating and mirroring, copying, pasting to speed up your work. Flipped it around because I felt like it didn't feel dangerous enough in that direction. And so again, it's just very fast and fluid. The other thing is you see me eliminate some there. A lot of times too much choice is not necessarily a good thing either. If you give too little options, that's not good as well for your client or art director. But sometimes if you bombard them with too many choices, then they freeze up and don't know what to look at, or things start to bleed and look too similar. So I decided to remove a few, and here I'm concentrating on these 9. And the same process again. A few new thumbnails were based off the original 3, and now from those newer ones I'm taking parts of that and utilizing them or basing off for a new design, erasing, adding to it, and as it see fits. So that logo that was on the chest now became the actual part of the sword in this case, the guard and the hilt. So this type of stuff, you kind of learn over time, and you get used to that process, and being, I guess, not only efficient but wise about your choices and how you go about it. When do I actually do it from scratch, and when do I actually copy and paste? When do I use a silhouette shape? Those kind of things. It's just over time you come to learn when to make those decisions as you're drawing and sketching. So the weapon type, did a battle axe there, but I didn't like it, or I didn't want to. I want to do something a little different. So here you see I'm working on some kind of staff with a bladed staff, adding some more elements to the armor, a little bit more detail again, but it's very rough and very loose. I'm just fleshing things out in a way that is clear enough for the viewer. And again, I'm not quite happy enough with this weapon, so I'm trying some other takes. Now it's just kind of this double-bladed hook type of weapon, and you see me carry on with that, moving it over with a little more spacing just to separate these images a bit more. So yeah, you see this combination of painting and sketching, and again, it's whatever gets the main information across in the quickest time. This is the only character where I added a shield, and with a sheathed weapon, in this case a dual sword. Everyone loves to be a dual wielding, at least at one point. And here, of course, now labeling. So it's just a very simple but important step, so the client knows which one you're referring to. You don't just say, "Oh, I like the one in the upper left. That's a little bit over." You're right. It's more clear. It's much more simpler and clear to say, "Oh, I like iteration D." So here, the next step is you take elements that work the best according to the purpose of or objective of the character of the game. And so in this case, maybe it's your art director saying, "I like the hood on A, but I like the lower part of the shawl or the fur on D, and the logo on E, the shoulder armor on F, the lower body on B, and let's say the sword or the weapon on G." So this next round, what you would do is you would iterate more thumbnails based on that, so it gets a little more refined. But what I've done in this case, just to simplify the demo, is now I'm going to take all those elements, cut and paste and put them together, and then go right into refining the design based on these selected attributes. So here you see me cutting and pasting, and just kind of touching up and erasing where I need to. Okay, so we got the fur on his pelvis there, got the hood. Now we're taking that fur extension, putting it on there on his chest, cutting pasting that shoulder armor on iteration F, taking the chest logo from thumbnail E. In this case, I think I changed it a little bit and I invert it so it stands out a bit better. And finally, taking the sword from thumbnail G. And so here you see this kind of Frankenstein version of all those attributes that fictional client or art director liked. Now I'm putting it over the original thumbnail that I had done earlier for the template, so I can just do this at a larger size, and it'll allow me to do a little more detail at this step. And so the next thing you see me do is just clean it up a little further. I start to mask out some of the skin on that scaled up Frankenstein version of the thumbnail, just to utilize the original skin from the original template, because it's a little higher res and a little cleaner. And again, erasing stuff that doesn't need to be overlapped here. And you'll see me use this base thumbnail as kind of a tonal layer to when I refine the sketch. Again, so I'm speeding up my work as opposed to drawing it out, cleaning it up, and then painting over it again. I'm utilizing the thumbnail tones to give me some of that. So again, this is another process where you're kind of reacting and going back and forth in terms of the type of technique you're going to go with, method, silhouette versus, or painted shapes versus line sketch. And so I'm reacting to what was painted underneath, and that's dictating the line designs I put down. If I was going straight into a sketch, these designs may not be exactly like this because I wouldn't be reacting to the silhouette. But you see here how I'm changing it up a little bit just based on the shapes that I see behind it. In some cases they're actual lines from the thumbnail line that I'm tracing over, but in other cases where it's more obscure because it was just a shape, I'm reacting to it and doing a certain more detailed design pass with just solely line work at this stage. So in this case, I'm not going back and forth as you see. I'm going straight into just a line stage because I feel like I have enough information there, and at this point, to show a little more clarity in the design, it would be prudent just to go with a cleaned up line, reacting to again what I see behind in the thumbnail. So as I mentioned earlier, this part took maybe about 15 minutes. So the key is to work fast. If you're spending, on a thumbnail like 20 minutes to a half hour or something, that's probably too long. Of course, it takes practice as well. And if I'm spending like, an hour or more on just this rough sketch, that's probably too long as well. Again, it depends, of course, on what you're drawing, the scope of it, but you get a certain gauge about where to spend the time and how much to put in it. So if you look at it another way, I had mentioned earlier, so within an hour's time having 9 thumbnails and 1 more refined sketch, and in an 8-hour day, that's what, 72 thumbnails and 8 different designs. So say I did this approach for 8 different characters, you get some idea of how fast you need to work and how productive you need to be. So here I'm changing the hilt and the ornament for the sword a bit. Again, using that mirrored approach to help speed up time in the work. And so this character that the process that we've gone to and how it's evolved, we see how it's getting a little more detailed and a little more clear in the information. But it could be towards a final, but usually not, considering this is only an hour's work. You can get a sense of how much time is put in refining and iterating to get that final design for a character. So any beloved character that you like in a game, whether it's Assassin's Creed or Master Chief in Halo or Commander Shepard in Mass Effect, the design process probably was very involving just to get to that final step. Even if like 75% through it, it hasn't changed much for the last 25%, but those little refined details are just that extra little thing that determines a good design, separates a good design from a great or outstanding design. Here I'm just adding this extra tones on overlay or soft light layer, just reacting to the thumbnail that's behind it. Again, that saved me some time in doing some tones. Separate some of the elements a little bit more. So, if I just showed you this drawing itself, you wouldn't have realized how I got to this point. So it's giving you this idea in the process of going from thumbnail to iterated thumbnail, revised to a sketch. You all get a better idea on the design process that goes into designing characters or any kind of concept. So again, touching it up a little more. And one more thing you'll see at the end is presentation is important. So I'll put this on a template, and usually the template has the project name, the date the concept was made, description of the concept and what stage it's at. And this is for two reasons: for clarity in communicating, so people know what they're looking at, and how to organize and document it, and as well just for professionalism in terms of how you present it, and it makes it look clean and professional. So there you have it. So I hope you enjoyed this demo and gives you a better idea of the process and the thought process and methodology behind doing a concept, in this case a character design. Thanks guys. Bye.